Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Existentialist Congregation of Atlanta. This morning, we are fortunate to have Bill Shelton as our accompanist, and our opening congregational song is in the Pink Songbook on page 45, and it is "Morning Has Broken." So I invite you to rise in body or spirit as you were willing and able to join in singing "Morning Has Broken." The words for "Morning Has Broken" is at the bottom of the are at the bottom of the page, as opposed to the "Look at the hillside" words that are in the stanzas. Bill, would you like to say anything more?
Yes, I picked this one because it's Easter, and I figured it somehow seemed appropriate for Easter. Okay.
Good morning. Welcome to the First Existentialist Congregation of Atlanta. My name is Patton White, and I will be facilitating this morning's celebration of life. We are a philosophically based spiritual community founded on existential and feminist principles and dedicated to human liberation and the protection of the natural world. We make our spiritual home here in the Old Stone Church, which was hand-built by the African-American Antioch East Baptist Church. I'm going to insert "by the members of the Antioch East Baptist Church," because I don't think the church itself built itself. We acknowledge that racial hostility drove those African Americans from the area, and we honor them and the powerful history of this place. We also acknowledge that in the 1800s, the Muskogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all indigenous people. Our opening activity and words will reference what today stands for many people, and that is regeneration, renewal. Our springtime essence, as it were. So I invite you to close your eyes briefly and to consider the spirit of gratitude for warming days, even though today may not be quite as warm as we may want it to be. And grateful for our bodies that we inhabit. Grateful for the heart that beats within each of us, that pumps the blood, that nourishes all of our body, the lungs that bring air in and share air out, and the autonomic nervous system that keeps us alive while we aren't even thinking about it. And we may now open the eyes again and continue with our service. So, if anyone has a community announcement that they would like to share during the service, there are a stack of index cards on the little table right behind where Jan Lister is sitting. And there is a little pencil, one of those little mini golf pencils.
There's a couple of pens too.
Oh, good. Somebody found something. So please write that down and bring them forward to me before the end of the minister's moment. Do we have anyone here visiting for the first time or hasn't been around in a while and would like to share who you are and how you came to be here? I'm seeing a bunch of really familiar faces and more unfamiliar ones. So we'll move on to any birthdays or anniversaries to celebrate today. All right, then we'll move right along to our next congregational song, which also is in the Pink Book, and it is on page 79. Where have all the flowers gone? Bill, would you like to share any words about this before we start?
Yes, it goes over a little bit to page 80. And there are 4 verses here. Let's sing the 4 printed on 79, and let's do the verse on the other page, where have all the graveyards gone? And this song seems appropriate for Ukraine.
Please rise in body or spirit as you were willing and able.
Where
this time, I would like to invite our fellowship minister, Reverend Marcia Mitchner, to come forward and share any remarks that she may have to share with us today.
Good morning.
Morning.
What a fun little group we've got here today. All right. I'm sorry, I was late this morning. We have 2 extra dogs in our household for the weekend, and they are not nearly as disciplined as my 2. So it took a little while longer to herd everybody and get here. But I did not want to miss Dr. Herman speaking this morning. So it's great to see everyone. This is a day and a season that is especially a time of renewal, a time of rebirth. And so my personal wish is that for everyone that in whatever way that you need to renew, whether it's trying to get out there and get in your garden and enjoy the beauty of the earth and being a part of it, or if it's renewing your spirit, renewing friendships, whatever. Think about what it is in your life that you might be interested in and feel like needs a little bit of renewal. I certainly could have a little list like this that I know I could certainly pay attention to. So it's just great to see everyone this morning, and I hope that you enjoyed this absolutely incredible. I want you to know that I asked for it, so.
When did you ask?
After yesterday, today. So I hope that you enjoy it. Do the things that make you feel good. Be with your friends and your family. And carpe diem.
Thank you, Marcia. So we are going to now have a few community announcements. If anyone has one that they have not passed up to me yet, now is the time to do so. Our first announcement, the first E-General Membership Annual Meeting will be held next Sunday, 1 week from today, April 16th at 12:30 p.m. after the Celebration of Life. There will be a Zoom link for those who cannot attend in person but would still like to be with us. Also, there will be a potluck lunch, so please bring a dish if you're able. And the other announcement is, yes, important community announcement. Grand potluck, bring a covered dish to share. So, I look forward to the feast next week that we create. We'll now move into our time of silence. This is a time for us to be in community with one another and also in silence with ourselves as well, letting the outside world disappear for at least a brief moment. We are now going to move on to our third congregational song, which is on page 44 in the Pink Book, When the Mountain Stood Alone.
I would just like to say about this song that this was one of the very favorite songs out of the book. The co-founder, the main driving impetus, I guess, the co-founder of our congregation, the Reverend R. Linger Clance, he really loved this song, and it's a good one. All right.
Please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able. We had one more announcement, and I realized I forgot to make the one I wanted to make. So from Marcia, there is a variety of little muffins and chocolate kisses in the kitchen. Hallelujah. I was remiss in sharing that it's coming Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Beacon Dance will be presenting an evening of new works, 6 new choreographic works, choreographed by young artists working at the intersection of art and activism or social justice at the B Complex, 8 p.m. each of those evenings. And if you want more information, just look at the e-blast when it comes out this week, and there will be links to more information there. And it's free. Yes,
Where?
at the B Complex. All right, so now is the time for us to share personal joys, sorrows, or concerns. And Wade is going to pass around the microphone for folks to share. Thank you, Bill. Our speaker this morning is Jon Herman. And I'm paraphrasing a bit here because when I asked Jon what he was looking forward to in the coming year, he used a specific term and it's now slipping my mind, but it had to do with being in this sort of looking forward to a transition as he looks towards retirement, and but wants to know what's going on, what's going to be the next chapter, if I'm capturing that spirit correctly. Anyway, Please join me in welcoming Jon Herman for his talk, Smoking Dope in the Suburbs, Rethinking Experiences Without the Smokescreen.
Good morning and happy Easter. And it's actually deeply ironic that I would say happy Easter because of where I grew up. I grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut. Am I audible, by the way?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. I grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut, which was one of those post-World War II suburban boom areas that had been a rural area but was in transition in the post-war era to nice little 2 and 3 and 4 bedroom homes. But I lived in a particular section of West Hartford known as the Reservation. It was called the Reservation technically because so many of the street names were named for Native American tribes or Native American people. You could drive literally 5 minutes in town and you can go up Mohawk Drive, turn on Mohegan Drive, take a right on Seneca Road, go up Huron Drive, look at Osage Road, past Iroquois Road, though we all called it Iroquois, take a little spin through Seminole Circle, and some of them are named for people like Pontiac, which was not a car, but was the chief of the Odawa Nation, Tecumseh from Shawnee, Pocahontas, and King Philip Drive. I actually went to King Philip Junior High School. King Philip was the European name taken by Metacomet, who was a Wampanoag tribal leader. And in fact, there was a Wampanoag country club not too far from where I grew up. And inexplicably, there was a Peyote Road, too. I'm not quite sure what they were thinking, but I think we always understood that that had something to do with the Native Americans who'd been in the region. That's technically why it was called the Reservation, but the real reason why it was called the Reservation is that it was almost an entirely Jewish population of town. When my parents were looking to move to West Hartford in the early 50s, and they looked in a somewhat more established community, the realtors told them that they might be more comfortable on the other side of town in some of the newer developments. Because in the south side of town, the real estate listings would say convenient to churches, which was a code for whom they would sell the properties to. And in fact, I was told, like within the last week or two, that real estate maps in West Hartford still prominently depict little Jewish stars and crosses on the maps of the town to indicate where the churches and the synagogues are. And so I grew up on the Reservation. And I'm not sure any of you knows what it's really like to grow up in an area where all of your friends and everybody, almost everybody in the school, not everybody, because there were the Catholic people that the Protestants wouldn't let live on the south side either. Wampanoag Country Club was a Catholic country club, where pretty much almost everybody is Jewish. It creates certainly a very insular environment, and it's only over the last 45 years that I've spent a lot of time reflecting on how insular that environment was, and some of the things that I missed and some of the things that I'm looking at now through different eyes. As an example, I mean, how insular it was, I think I was in my 20s before I knew what Easter was. I think that before I had learned the story of the resurrection, I had learned that after Easter it was safe to start wearing white pants again, or something like that. And my favorite story of how insular the community was that when I first started seeing my girlfriend Ellen, whom some of you now know as my wife, so this was a long time ago, I asked her what stereotypes her family had of Jews. And she thought about it and then said, all Jews like Chinese food. So I told that to my friends, and their response was, well, doesn't everybody? Because certainly in our town, everybody did. But I'm really not just here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about a particular experience of growing up in that town when, one summer evening, sometime when I was probably older than driving age, but possibly not older than voting age, or close to voting age, some friends of mine and I, probably 4 or 5 of us out of a gang of about 7 to come closely together, we were driving around. We might have had a destination. If we were going there, we were taking what we called the marijuana route, which was a way of making it take a little longer to accomplish the things we had to accomplish on the way, and give ourselves time to open the windows and air out. And we would go in neighborhoods, parts of town we didn't necessarily know super duper well, but we stayed in the same general area. And one evening while we were out overdoing our stimulants, it came time where Mother Nature came to call, and we had to pull up to a neighborhood to stop by some friendly-looking bushes. And so, after we were done hanging our snakes, as we might call it in those days, a police car pulled up with bright lights and the light flashing, with kind of a, "What are you boys doing?" We all had being inarticulate down very well. It was kind of, trying to come up with some rational explanation until the cop nicely said, or maybe not so nicely said, "Just emptying your bladders?" And I think we might have been pointing to the bush. That's what we were doing. And he kind of looked us over, and he said, "Okay," maybe asked us where we came from, might have asked us where we went to school, why we were there. And then he said, "Okay, you guys just drive carefully." And afterwards, wow, were we in this giddy celebratory mood, Wow, that was so close. We were so lucky. How could he not have smelled the dope on our clothes or in the car? And it was probably not for years later that any of us ever considered the possibility that it wasn't luck, but that we were enjoying certain advantages of privilege. That had it been 5 black guys with afros who didn't live in that area, I'm not sure that the police would have been so kind. This was, in a sense, a kind of privilege. And that the police were probably told, if it's a bunch of benign stoners in town, and they live in town, and they're not committing any crimes, and they don't look like they're causing trouble, just don't worry about them. And it really probably took us a long time before any of us even thought about the idea that this was actually the result of some privilege. And so I'm really thinking less about marijuana right now, and more about privilege. And one thing I tend to do when I'm standing here is think about the words I'm thinking about. Like, what do we mean when we say something is spiritual? Last time I was here, what do we mean when we say inspiration? And I notice that the same thing is true with the word privilege. We use it a lot of different ways. It's a privilege for me to speak here today. We give our kids privileges if they try hard in school. It was my privilege to see the Grateful Dead in 1971 when Pigpen was still playing at that. Oh, wow, okay, great. But I think what we're really talking about are certain consequential privileges, things that systemically are afforded to some people but not others. And very often the determining criteria for those privileges, or who has access to those advantages, are based on race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and so forth. And kind of an odd quirk is that even people who do not have privileges in certain venues may have them in others. People who come from a disempowered group of people, well, there may be someone in that family who has more privileges than the other, who still has the ability to bestow privileges to the children, let's say, in that family. Criminals in jail earn privileges. And if any of you happen to have seen that book or heard an interview with the author, it's slipping my mind right now. It was by a guy who went undercover with Afghani refugees. And one of the things he pointed out is that we really take for granted the privilege of thinking that a valid passport will get us across a border, which doesn't necessarily work for a lot of people escaping a war zone. I think the reality was that growing up in this, I don't know if it was entirely affluent, there were more affluent parts of town, but growing up white and privileged in this particular suburb where I grew up, that I think we could find that certain borderline behaviors we could do with a general confidence that people would permit us some latitude. But I don't think we really understood that our get-out-of-jail-free cards were attached to our skin or our wallets or our zip codes. And I'm going to do some, I don't like to read things here, I like to talk, but I'm a little spacey right now, and I don't want to miss some important things that I wanted to say. If my friends and I could engage in these kind of illegal-ish activities without fear of unhappy consequences, then we could probably pretty much assume that there was very little risk engaging in legal activities. We didn't have to worry when we walked up and down the street, when we drove to our homes, when we jogged through neighborhoods, although jogging wasn't quite a big thing yet in the 1970s. If we shopped in convenience stores, if we went bird watching, could do these things without arousing suspicions of those around us, without drawing attention from the police. And yet we didn't realize that it was a certain shade of privilege. That the same thing that allowed us to escape that marijuana adventure allowed us to walk through pretty much untrammeled through day-to-day life, through mundane activities. And now, if any of you are protesting, if any of you are saying, oh, wait a minute, walking in your neighborhood is not a privilege, it's an ordinary human right that we all enjoy, so why would we say someone is privileged to walk up and down the street? Well, yeah, that's exactly my point. It's a privilege, it's a right to go bird watching, but that man, Christian Cooper, who was harassed in a New York park by a white woman, didn't truly get to enjoy that right. It's a right to shop at a convenience store. It's a right to go jogging. And for Christ's sake, it's a right to drive to your own mother's home. But we all know how the exercise of those rights ended for George Floyd, for Ahmaud Arbery, and not too long ago, Tyree Nichols, doing these very mundane, legal, inconsequential, ordinary activities that I take for granted I can do without harassment, but that a whole bunch of people in our community can't do. And so I suppose what I'm talking about here is privilege is access to rights that everyone should enjoy, but not everyone does. And this, for me, is profoundly disturbing. It's seriously messed up to have to recode the idea of rights as privilege. But of course, it's even more upsetting when you think of what the reason for that is. And that is that there are whole sectors of society for whom those rights are so precarious. It might be okay that a cop granted a little grace to a group of middle-aged white teenagers who smoked a few joints and pissed on a few bushes. But it is beyond a moral outrage that a gang of testosterone-fueled cops would beat to death a young black man for no apparent reason 100 yards from his mother's home. But then again, it shouldn't be a matter of privilege for a child to receive adequate nutrition or a decent education. It shouldn't be a matter of privilege for a person to live one's life with dignity, with freedom from abuse, war, and exploitation. But sadly, I think that's the way it is these days in a lot of places. And I have to confess that even with spring upon us, I do find it painful and infuriating and debilitating to see such obvious wrongs that persist for so long. And for me, to feel very powerless sometimes in doing something about them. And so, perhaps it's time for me to shift from Happy Easter and to remind you that we're in the middle of a holiday that I never celebrate, which is the Jewish Passover, which is about human liberation. And this community is dedicated to human liberation. And I think that the lesson that I've learned, or am learning again and again from that particular holiday, is that the job is still not done, that there is a lot of work to do. And but it can be helpful for me to at least be among people who know that there is that work to do, and to do what they can to try to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yes.
We will have our closing congregational song, and then immediately following that, a closing activity. So, Bill,
Here I am.
our closing congregational song is on page 114. Let's get together.